Town Mayor Geordin Hill-Lewis has condemned the docking of a Russian battleship at the city's harbour, saying it's not welcomed. That Navy ship is on its way to KZN, we understand, for a joint military exercise that also includes China. Now, critics say this military exercise will put South Africa on a collision course with the West and could be interpreted as supporting Russia's invasion of Ukraine. But South Africa seems to be unfazed, saying countries around the world engage in these exercises all the time. Well, let's get the thoughts then of international relations expert. Always good to have Dr Oscar van Heerden joining us this morning. And Doc, hello too, and appreciate the time. So let's start there. Collision course with the West, is that how this is going to be interpreted?
Good morning, Gareth, and to your viewers. Some indeed does interpret it as a collision course with the West. I think it's an overstatement. I think that, as you indicated, these exercises happen with many countries. Last year there were exercises with the United Kingdom, between South Africa and the United Kingdom, and indeed with the United States as well. Not so long ago. So it is something that does happen within the international arena. It is to look at, whether they can actually work together in a military situation, in a disaster situation, or in a situation of piracy. So I think that the West, as it's referred to, might not necessarily give full support to South Africa with regards to these particular exercises. But as to whether it's a collision course, I think that's a bit of an overstatement.
It probably is a bit of an overstatement as well. As you say, it's quite normal to have these joint exercises. I suppose the issue right now is the timing of it regarding Russia, Ukraine, and then obviously we know that there is this ongoing tussle between China and America as two big economies, and I almost feel like we're the only child in an unhappy marriage, and we have to almost choose which parent we like, don't we? We have to move very carefully, and I suppose something like this is probably going to be bigger than it actually is.
No, indeed. South Africa's stance, as I'm sure many know, is a non-aligned stance. As you know, South Africa, during the Cold War, which was the tension between the United States and the Soviet Union at the time, they also wanted to force countries to pick a side. South Africa belonged to a grouping which was the non-aligned movement, which basically said we refuse to take a side and we call for an end to the war. And what we're seeing here, Gareth, is a consistency from the South African government in keeping with that tradition to say it's not about condemning either or, but it is about saying that South Africa is for peace, and South Africa feels that diplomacy and dialogue is what is going to resolve the crisis in the Ukraine.
Let me ask this then. If we are, as a country, trying to remain as neutral as possible, Doctor, wouldn't the best course of action to not have any military exercises with any of the countries involved in this? So not having had military exercises last year, as you said, with the United States, not having them now with China, and having a Russian frigate in the Cape Town harbour. If we're going to stay neutral, wouldn't that be better if we just don't engage in these exercises at all?
Yeah, no, so in international relations, Gareth, I know it's about nitpicking perhaps, but there's a difference between non-alignment and neutrality. It doesn't necessarily mean you are neutral, but I think the point is that these exercises, I think it's important, and I'm sure you will agree, frigates, large ships, large pieces of equipment making its way across the oceans, it's a logistical nightmare and it takes a lot of planning. I don't think that either of the parties, China, Russia, or South Africa, would have thought that there would be an ongoing war with one of the parties a year later. I'm making the point that these exercises are planned well in advance. I don't think that anyone had thought that there would be a war between Russia and Ukraine, and certainly not that it was going on for more than a year. So I think, there's a lot of tension, there's a lot of wanting to take sides, but I do think the South African government is sending out a message to say we are a sovereign nation, we take our own decisions, and just like we've had exercises with other Western countries, we're now having an exercise with China and Russia.
And perhaps, I know we're talking international relations, maybe we can just talk provincial relations for a moment. Clearly a very strong point from the Cape Town Mayor Geordin Hill-Lewis saying that the Russian frigate's not welcome there. That, to my mind, seems to be in contradiction to the national government's stance as well. So what would international relations see in what's a government being essentially undermined and questioned by a provincial government? That's got to be part of this as well, doesn't it?
Oh, yes, of course. I mean, and I think that anyone worth their salt internationally will see this as a healthy democracy. The mayor of Cape Town belongs to the official opposition party. They don't always agree with the national ruling or governing party, the ANC. And this is one such case in point. It's not something to blow out of proportion. You would recall, Gareth, that there's a number of issues where the DA and the ANC don't agree with regards to international relations, our relationship with Cuba, our relationship with the Palestinians, as it is with the Israelis and so forth. So there are a number of points where the provincial government of the Democratic Alliance disagrees with national policy. And I think that we must welcome that as a healthy element of democracy. Unfortunately, National Defence Force and matters of the military is a national competence, and therefore it's the national government that decides what it does in that regard.
Yeah, I appreciate your time, as always, international relations expert, Dr. Oscar van Heerden, always very kind to make time to speak to us here on eNCA, getting his thoughts on what we're supposed to, as a country, make of this international relations discussion around having a Russian frigate in Cape Town and these joint exercises between South Africa and China and Russia. We perhaps will have that as our viewer question tomorrow. Do you agree we should, as a country, be doing this, knowing what's happening over in Russia and Ukraine, or do we, and I thought that was very interesting from the doctor, the difference between neutrality and non-alliance. There is a very big difference there.